Happiness. Written by myself. Voiced by Graceka Voice. Aaron stared at the world in the palm of his hand. Somehow, even though he stood in what seemed to be space, a breeze blew his jacket. It seemed to stream out into a flow into the wind, almost like a shadow, its black material blotting out areas of light that looked like stars. He looked back to the planet. It seemed to have its own kind of flow. He could see planes flying over oceans, trains moving across countries, and if he looked closely, he could even see the people walking to wherever they might be going. The complexity of it all amazed him, and at the same time, terrified him. One chink in the armor, one loose screw in this machine, and the billions of people on it all go down in smoke. He took in a deep breath and faced the person. No, person is a title this thing doesn't deserve. It was more of a creature than a person. Although it looked human, Aaron at least hoped no person would ever give the lives of billions to one other person's decision. Aaron thought back to the conversation the two had just had. This was God, and like he had done before once, he wanted to restart humanity and destroy everyone, to try again, to make something pure. He'd asked Aaron's advice. Hell, in the end he gave the decision to Aaron but added a new cost. The words he'd spoken still shook to Aaron's core. Destroy the world and start it anew, or save it, but you'll have never existed. No one will have any memories of you. The world itself will have never known you. Aaron started crying softly. The tears rolled down his face. He steadied his breathing a bit and gave a response. Fine. Take me. Erase me. But can I just ask to please have one more day? Please, to make more people happy. He looked God in the eyes. Their piercing yellow glow gave him pause. Just one more day. Please. God smiled behind his white beard and brought his hands together. The white robe sleeves covered them as they clasped. I thought I picked a good one when I saw you. Enjoy your day. It will be your last. The tears kept falling from Aaron's eyes. Even his space seemed to melt around him. And he woke up. He sat up panting, his blankets falling off his bare shoulders. He could feel the chill of the fan that was across, always running while he slept, cool the sweat across his forehead and body. Swallowing hard, he looked around the room and took stock. Same old green chair with his jacket on it, same dresser, one knob missing from the third drawer, same bed with his striped sheets and matching blanket. Everything seemed the same, but that dream had him feeling different. He felt such a cocktail of emotion. Anything ranging from barely happy to ecstatically happy. He let out a sigh. It was just a dream, a very real feeling dream, but still, just a dream. Aaron got up and started his day as usual. He showered, shaved, and put on a clean set of clothes. Today, going with a white and blue striped t-shirt, the white to contrast his black hair and the blue to match his eyes, along with his customary jeans. He felt ready for the day. Yet the dream still nagged at him, the thought that this could possibly be his last day on Earth. He stared into the mirror, his reflection staring back. That doesn't matter though, right? Yes, today could be my last day alive, but there's a chance I could die every day from any random kind of shit. What makes today so special? Nothing. That's it. Nothing makes it special. It's just another day. He smiled at himself, confident with his look, his hair finally spiked correctly, and turned toward the door to leave. Kiran stood staring at the Earth on the display he'd made for it. His first planet with life, and he'd already restarted it once. Would he have to restart it again, even with Aaron Vec, giving up his whole reality and existence to save it? He'd made the selfless decision that Kiran or God as Aaron would have known him as, expected of him. Yet he couldn't help but think he'd just randomly chosen a person in the minority, one of the few who would choose the world over themselves. Humanity had fallen so far from his own expectations he'd placed oh so long ago. Where had he gone wrong? Where had he misguided them? Wait, those questions made it seem like it was his fault. Was this his fault? Did he fail them? Humans had been the first life that could learn, that could flourish, that could surpass any boundary he'd made natural. Even with all that, he failed this race? Kiran paced over to the earth and leaned down to look closer. He saw a man mugging another man in broad daylight in North America. He saw a murderer slink out of a house somewhere in Europe. He'd stopped keeping track of the countries or empires a few years ago, since the people changed the borders, names, and empires so often. He stared and studied each misdeed he could spot while it was happening in real time. Each one soured his mood more and more. He'd made these people to be a beacon of his own idea of a perfect civilization, so that the next time he made a race with potential, eventually the humans could guide them. The way they are now, they'd probably just kill or enslave them, then sell their planet to the highest bidder for farmland or vacation homes. He sighed and stared absently at the globe. Something caught his eye. A little girl huddled over a box in the rain. He looked closer, interested. The girl was holding an umbrella with a small hole in it. She was dressed in a full raincoat, hat, and boots. In the box he saw kittens someone had left to be taken by anyone who wanted them. This girl was protecting them from the rain. Kiran had seen things like this before, but in his melancholy mood, this felt refreshing. It felt like a glass of water after a day of long thirst. He gave a small smile and whisked his fingers across, causing the winds to change, and within 15 minutes, the rainstorm had moved on from the girl. She looked up, put the umbrella down, and pet the kittens. Kiran, smiling, thought to himself, if only more people could hold on to that selflessness and innocence that so many children have. Aaron had shown a spark of that selflessness. Of course, it was under much more drastic conditions, but he'd shown selflessness nonetheless. Isn't that what I wanted to see? The cool autumn air hit Aaron as he stepped out his front door. He stood on the two-step patio up to his apartment and took in a deep breath, relishing the crispness in the air. Today is another day, another chance to do better. He smiled confidently and started down the road, headed toward Happiness Incorporated. Aaron was a happiness creator, and always had been. It was his calling. Making people happy and appreciative of life was the best thing anyone could ever do in his eyes. He walked up with a pep in his step and began whistling a tune. A single penalty unit drove by at a very high speed, but Aaron didn't pay attention to wherever they were going. It didn't matter. Whoever they captured for penalty would eventually end up with Aaron, so he could make them happy. That's how it always worked, and how it always would. People would do bad things, and they'd get caught, and he'd make them happy afterwards. It was a beautiful system. He smiled and gave his little tune a few more high notes. A bright green caught his eye. That shouldn't be there, he thought. Aaron stared at the single protrusion from a large plant made of a harder material than most. He never bothered to learn their names. The plants didn't matter to him, except when one was misbehaving like this one. How dare it have something green when these are the red and brown months? He pulled out his long-range two-way radio the Happiers had given him and pressed the button down to speak. Hello, security of Section A. One of these plants has a big green thing grown from it during the wrong months. You need to come down and fix it. There was a slight pause, then a voice over the radio. This is Unit 3 of Section A. We are on it. Within minutes, the unit arrived in their brown penalty vehicle, a box-like car with 3 wheels and penalty written bright red along the sides. A short man with a large mustache got out inside, grabbing a sort of tube-like contraption with a brown cartridge at the far end. He pointed the empty side toward the green bit and sprayed brown paint all over it. Aaron nodded. That's how it should be. That looks far better. Kira stared, perplexed by his own question. How long had he been standing there, contemplating? It must have been at least 2 hours. He just stood there and gotten lost in the mind of an infinite being who still can't find the answer to one question because he is the one who has to create the answer. What do you do if you need an answer, but you're in charge of creating it, yet you can't figure out what it should be? He sighed and walked to the far end of the galaxy, looking at a planet, distant from the sun. A planet covered in craters filled with some sort of acidic water. Why had he made this one? Was there a purpose to it? Or had he just forgotten to do anything with it? It spun in the sea of stars around it, the water shimmering on the planet's surface. It reminded him of the first time he'd wiped out the human race. He'd melted everything with acid rain, killing all of them and destroying most of the artifacts they would have left behind. It was a good way of cleansing. It had left him with a brand new, fresh start. Maybe he should try that again. He stared into the water on the planet's surface. Or maybe I could even just leave them alone and create a new life here. He thought on it and stared back towards Earth across the galaxy. Aaron sighed tiredly. He'd arrived at work an hour ago, yet he hadn't made anyone happy today. Whoever the penalty unit had called for earlier must have gone to another happiness enforcer. Today was just a tedious bore of waiting for anyone to do something wrong and come to him to be made happy again. He waited another half hour before his happy bell went off, which did indeed make him happy. It was time to put on his special uniform. He belted up the large straps of the black overalls, then donned on the bulletproof long-sleeved shirt, finally finishing with his black face mask. It's time to make someone happy. He went down to the hall to make a happy room, to his left. The man seemed to be in his 20s, wearing the usual orange jumpsuit. Orange was such a happy color. How could someone be so young and be unhappy? It's okay. He'd fix that. Aaron walked over to the front side of the chair the man was strapped into. He couldn't say anything, of course, with the gag over his mouth, but Aaron knew. He must be excited to be happy again. He pressed the right side button on the chair, and the wall behind him turned on as a giant monitor, showing images of peaceful and happy things. Kittens, puppies, beach walks, a proud father, a peaceful meadow. So many happy things that Aaron always enjoyed seeing. Such fantastic places he wondered if they were real sometimes. Then he came to the large syringe at Aaron's side. He filled it with the happy juice and stuck it into the man's neck. The man stiffened, then relaxed, his pupils going wide and his head tilting, still watching the images. Aaron smiled. Another job well done. Another person made happy. He ran, stared at the planet, then decided that an asteroid would hit it, creating 2 moons, stuck in its orbit from the destruction. He would start over here, and it would be a good, fantastic new world. Maybe he could make them good enough to guide the humans. Aaron spent the day enjoying every minute of making people happy, and happily loathing every minute that no one was there to be brought back into the happiness. Before he knew it, it had been 14 hours. His shift was over. He let out a sigh and stepped back away from his desk and away from the building. The walk home was uneventful and almost melancholy, but he couldn't feel something like that anymore. He'd been in the happiness for too long to feel anything like that. He stripped down, took another shower, then spent a leisurely hour making dinner and eating it. Come the strike of 11 p.m., he went off to bed. He had to be at the office at 8 a.m. Of course, he had enjoyed his leisure hour, but nothing beat work after all. He slipped off his clothes, pulled the covers to his shoulders, and drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Aaron woke up.